When most businesses think about winning public sector work, they think about tenders. You find a tender, you write a bid, submit it, and hopefully win it. Simple. Except that's only one route into working with the public sector. Some businesses spend years chasing tenders, not realising that there are other routes available that might be quicker, easier, or simply a better fit for what they do. So in this video, I'm going to break down the main routes to market available to suppliers. I'm going to talk about what they are, what the different options look like, and how to work out which route might make the most sense for your business. Because sometimes the challenge isn't finding an opportunity, it's finding the right way in. So what is a route to market? Before we start, let's get clear on what we mean by a route to market. Put simply, it's how your product or service gets from your business into the hands of a public sector buyer. Now, this is important because different sectors buy in different ways. A software company might focus heavily on frameworks, and a construction company may spend most of its life bidding for tenders. There isn't one route that works for everyone. The trick is understanding which routes are the most commonly used in your sector and which give your business the best chance of success. Route 1, open tenders. Now let's start with the obvious one. Open tenders. This is the route most people know. Buyer advertises an opportunity, suppliers submit their bids, the buyer evaluates them, chooses a winner, the contract gets awarded. Now there can be big money in these opportunities, but they can also be one of the hardest ways into the public sector because they're usually the most competitive. They can also be incredibly time consuming. Depending on the size and complexity of the contract, you could be dealing with dozens of questions, supporting evidence, policies, pricing schedules, method statements, and all sorts of other documents that need to be completed and submitted. In larger organisations, it's not unusual to have a dedicated bid team whose sole job is managing and writing tender submissions. That's how much effort can go into these. Now, that's not me saying you should rule them out. Far from it. Open tenders can be a fantastic source of business, and for some sectors, they're a route you simply can't ignore. What I would say is just don't become obsessed with them. They're a route into the market, but they're not the only route into the market, so you shouldn't make them your entire strategy. Route 2, under threshold opportunities. Now this is where I think a lot of SMEs miss a trick. Not every public sector requirement ends up as a full tender. In fact, buyers purchase lower value goods and services every single day through things like RFQs, or requests for quotes, quick quotes, and other simplified processes. The problem is that most businesses are so busy chasing that big shiny tender that they just don't see the smaller opportunities. And yet those smaller opportunities can be incredibly valuable because they help you build experience, they help you build relationships, they can help you build case studies, and perhaps most importantly, they help buyers become comfortable working with you. If you're a startup, SME, consultant, trainer, or specialist service provider, these opportunities can be one of the best ways to get your foot in the door. No, they are not going to be worth millions, but they can be the stepping stone that gets you bidding for the ones that are. One of the things public sector buyers look for when evaluating bids is relevant experience. They want evidence that you've done something similar before and can deliver what you're promising. And that's where these smaller opportunities can be incredibly valuable. They help you build a track record. They give you real examples, real outcomes, and real customer references that you can use in your future bids. And just as importantly, they give buyers confidence. If a buyer can see that you've successfully delivered similar work before, even on a smaller scale, they're much more likely to trust you with something bigger. So don't dismiss these opportunities just because the contract value isn't huge. Sometimes the contract isn't the prize. It's the experience, the credibility, and the evidence it gives you for the next opportunity is where the real value lies. And you can check out this video for more information on RFQs for under threshold opportunities. Route 3, framework opportunities. A framework agreement is essentially a pre-approved supplier list. Suppliers compete to get onto the framework, and buyers can then use that framework to purchase goods and services without running a completely open procurement every time. Being on a framework is like making the football team. It doesn't guarantee you'll play a match, but it does mean you're in the pool of players the manager can choose from. And that's exactly what a framework does. It puts you in the pool of suppliers a buyer can choose from when they need to buy something. And when they do, you won't be competing against every supplier in the country. You will only compete against the other suppliers who made it onto that framework too. And depending on the framework, that might mean dozens of suppliers rather than hundreds. That doesn't mean it's easy. You still need to stand out and win the work, but at least you've already cleared the first hurdle by getting onto the framework in the first place. Getting onto the framework can be competitive. Some only open every few years and some generate far more business than others. But if the buyers in your industry regularly use frameworks, they are definitely worth considering because they can give you access to opportunities that suppliers outside the framework won't even see. Route 4, DPSs and dynamic markets. The next route is something called a DPS, which stands for Dynamic Purchasing System, and its newer cousin, the dynamic market. Now, don't worry too much about the names. The easiest way to think about them is a more flexible version of a framework. One of the biggest frustrations with frameworks is that they only open for applications at certain times. If you miss the deadline, you could be waiting for years for another chance to get on it. A DPS or dynamic market works differently. Suppliers can usually apply to join throughout its lifetime, and that's great news for growing businesses, startups, and suppliers who are new to the public sector, because you don't have to sit around waiting for the next framework opportunity to come along. Now, getting onto a DPS or dynamic market doesn't guarantee you'll win work either. Just like a framework is simply a route the buyers can use to find and buy from suppliers. You will still need to compete when opportunities come up, but at least you've got yourself in the game. Now, these can be a really useful way of getting in front of the public sector buyers without waiting years for a standard framework to reopen. Route 5, partnerships. Next up, partnerships. One of the biggest mistakes I see SMEs make is assuming that they have to do everything themselves. You don't. Sometimes the quickest route into the public sector is by working with another business. That could be a larger organisation, a supplier that's already working with the public sector, or another business with complementary skills. The idea is simple. You join forces with another business. You might bring the specialist expertise, and they might bring the relationships or experience of working with the public sector or access to customers. On your own, you each bring something valuable. Together, you create something even stronger. Of course, partnerships need to be built on trust. You need to choose the right people and be clear about who's doing what. But when they work well, they can be one of the fastest ways to open doors that might otherwise remain closed. Route 6, teaming. Now, the next route is teaming. This is similar to partnership, but there's a subtle difference. Partnerships are often longer-term relationships, and teaming is usually focused on a specific opportunity. So, for example, imagine you're a software company and you've spotted a public sector opportunity that looks like a great fit. Your software is excellent and ticks all the technical boxes. The problem is, the buyer isn't just looking for software. They also want implementation support, training, change management, and ongoing user support. Now, you could bid on your own, but there's another supplier that specialises in exactly those areas. By teaming up, you're able to offer the buyer a much stronger overall solution than either of you could provide alone. But suddenly, you're not just offering great software, you're offering a great software, smooth implementation, user training, and ongoing support. Separately, you each bring part of the solution. Together, you offer the complete package, making you a much more attractive option to the buyer. Now, this can be particularly useful for SMEs and specialist providers because buyers aren't looking for the biggest supplier. They are looking for the supplier or team of suppliers that gives them the confidence that you can deliver. Route 7, subcontracting. The next route is subcontracting. When people think about winning public sector work, they often picture themselves winning a contract directly with a government department or, say, NHS organisation. But that's not the case. Across many sectors, there are already larger companies delivering major public sector contracts, and few of which deliver absolutely everything themselves, because they rely on subcontractors to help them deliver it. And in this situation, the larger organisation holds the contract with the public sector buyer, and you, the subcontractor, holds a contract with them. So you're not contracting directly with the buyer, whether it's the NHS organisation or government department, you're supplying part of the solution through the prime contractor, the one who holds the contract with them. So instead of asking yourself, how do I win work from the public sector? Sometimes a better question is, who's already winning the work that I want to be involved in? Because if you can become part of the supply chain, you've got yourself a route into the market. In fact, the government itself recognises subcontracting as a route into the public sector. In its SME action plan, it states that by joining supply chains, SMEs can gain access to larger government contracts that they might not otherwise be able to secure on their own. We encourage larger prime contractors to utilise the services of smaller businesses for specific requirements where it makes sense to do so. So for many businesses, particularly SMEs and specialists, subcontracting can be one of the quickest ways to access public sector work without having to win a public sector contract directly yourself. So which route is right for you? So the answer depends on where your business is today. If you're new to public sector procurement, I'd probably focus on things like RFQs, the under-threshold opportunities, partnerships, teaming, and subcontracting. If you're a specialist SME, you might want to look more closely at the DPSs, dynamic markets, and framework partnerships. And if you're more established, then frameworks and open tenders may become a bigger focus. The important thing is understanding how your customers buy and then aligning your strategy accordingly, because there's no point spending all of your energy chasing a route that buyers in your sector really use. Now, before we finish, I want to be really clear. I am not saying don't bid for tenders. Far from it. But tendering can be a long game. Winning that first major contract often takes time. Time spent building experience, credibility, relationships, and a track record. And that's where these other routes to market come in. Whether it's under-threshold opportunities, frameworks, partnerships, teaming arrangements, or subcontracting, each one can help you build momentum and strengthen your position. Because public sector success really happens overnight. It's usually built one opportunity at a time. So there you have it. Don't just ask yourself, what tenders can I bid for? Ask yourself, what's the best route into this market for my business? And if you need support on any of this, head over to thetendercoach.com, book up a call, and let's talk about how I can help you move your business forward.